Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to the Cloud English podcast. My name is Luke, and it is Friday, August 11th, 2023. If you can believe it, that's what day it is, I think, probably, maybe. It's a sunny day where I am in New York State, and I've been on break, and I'm back. So, it's good to be back. The break was due to the birth of my son, which I will be talking about momentarily, and that's actually tied to the theme of today's English lesson. Today we're going to be talking about English. I'm going to be teaching you words and phrases. We're going to be exploring things, some things more connected and less connected to our theme. We'll be talking about a bit of grammar. And I'm gonna talk through, well, basically what happened a little bit, and we'll pull out some things from that as well. So anyway, thanks for joining. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And before we get started, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. That's a good way to let the algorithms know that you enjoy the content and you think other people might enjoy it as well. And so that's a simple action that you can take to show your support. If you do nothing else, that would help a lot. I would appreciate it. If you want to take it a step further, you can get a free course, Natural English Conversations. That's in the links in the description. And let's see, what else? Join the Discord if you like. Ask me direct questions there if you have any. That's the best way to, I think, get in touch with me, generally speaking. And you can get a discount, 30% discount on the membership. I believe that's also in the links in the description. So there you have it. And for the first time, the mug I'm holding up, listeners, I apologize, does say Rad Dad. And for the first time, it's actually true. I've had the mug for many years, but it has only just become true. Well, I don't know. Maybe not. Dad, yes. Rad, I don't know. Maybe not so much. We'll see. Well, I'm still figuring that part out. I don't know yet. So, what is new? Well, I do have a new course coming out. That one's going to be on a full course, a complete course on using AI tools like ChatGPT and Google to improve your English. That's going to be a fairly in-depth course. You may have seen some of my standalone videos on the topics, but this one is going to be sort of putting it all together. And again, as I said, much more in-depth in that course. So look out for that later this month. Otherwise, I've been kind of on break, so I've just been sort of learning about parenthood and changing a lot of diapers and sitting outside, doing a lot of reading. I'm reading a book about alchemy for the second time. Marie-Louise von Franz's book called Alchemy, which is very interesting. And it's been great. It's been nice to have a bit of a break. So anyway, those who are watching, if you're interested in listening, you can also listen on any podcast platform you like. Those listening, if you're interested in watching, you can do so on YouTube and Facebook. Okay. So why don't we get into it? I want to tell this story because I think it's relatively interesting, right? About 3 weeks ago, we had decided, and when I say we, I mean my wife and I, and her mother, my mother-in-law, decided to go to a museum called the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors. You can look it up. It's very interesting, very psychedelic, wacky stuff, but pretty cool, right? And it was about a week before the due date of our son. So we decided to go to this museum, the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, to look at these psychedelic paintings. Essentially, this artist named Alex Gray and his wife, I believe what they do is they take LSD and then they paint together. I think that's their process, something like that. And you've probably seen some of the art online. They're actually pretty well known, pretty famous. So the second floor of this large building, there's this huge building full of art pieces, kind of themed. The second floor is completely dedicated to the process of reproduction from beginning to end. And it's got a very spiritual energy about it, very psychedelic, a lot of colors and very full of symbols, right? Symbolic, very interesting. And so we got to the second floor and we're looking around this room and thought it was just really interesting that here we were getting close to the end of one process, pregnancy, and the beginning of another, right? Having a child. And we're in this room dedicated essentially to this, different areas of this. Then the moment that we left that room to go up to the second floor, we went up to the second floor. As soon as we left that room, then her water broke. Mushroom's water broke. Mushroom is my wife, if you don't know. So that's essentially when it's time to go to the hospital, right? So we left and we went to the hospital. And we were there for, I think, about 30 hours. But it had this whole time, this feeling of it being very odd timing that we were in this room feeling these feelings of, wow, this is, something very ancient we're doing. Because it is. You create a life. This is this thing that has been the case for every single person who has ever lived, right? It's the most ancient spiritual thing you can do in some sense, right? You're participating in the species in a way. And every person who is alive has been through it, as a baby at least, and then potentially goes through it as an adult, creating new life. And so the timing was very interesting. But it gave the whole experience then of going to the hospital, of getting set up at the hospital and doing all the paperwork, it gave it this feeling of importance and profundity, which it gave it a sort of veneer of shimmering, golden, transcendent whatever. And I don't know what it would have been like otherwise, but I'm certainly glad that that's how it happened, because everything then seemed to just flow. Because of that, we felt relaxed, like, oh, it's supposed to happen now. I don't know if that's what that means, but it felt like that. And so because of that, we were both very relaxed, in a good mental space, no stress. Everything was perfect. We were prepared. We had everything we needed. Everything was in place, perfect. And then we went to this place and it happened. And then we went to the hospital and everything was fairly smooth after that. Now I'm going to show a couple of pictures, so those who may be listening or watching, you can watch if you're listening. I guess is what I mean. This is the artist Alex Gray. This is one of the main paintings that you see online, sort of these fractal structures that are representative of some sort of psychedelic state. And then this is one of the paintings from the, I don't know if the room is called the fertility room, but it may as well be this sort of radiant baby standing between the mother and father, each with a halo around their head, right? And his third eye is sort of activated, and there are sort of a halo of peacock eyeballs surrounding his head, as though he's some sort of divine being bringing down wisdom from the netherworld or whatever. And there's something about that. So then we got to the hospital, and this is Mushroom in the hospital. Doesn't look like she's struggling with labor. I think this was about 8 hours into it, and she was actually doing pretty well. Not bad, actually. She handled it really well. Of course, there's discomfort, there's pain, right? But she handled it very well. And then this is after the baby was born. Right after the baby's born, they do what's called skin to skin. And skin to skin is exactly what it sounds like. You want the baby to be on your skin directly because that helps with bonding. It helps calm them. There's some sort of interaction that happens when you do the skin to skin contact. I don't fully understand it, but apparently there's some sort of interaction that goes on. So this is a picture of him then after we went into the nursery. So we were in the delivery room for about 30 hours. And then you go to the area, the postpartum area, I guess it's the nursery or whatever it's called. Recovery room, maybe the recovery room. And so we were learning, they teach you how to, at the hospital, this is in a hospital. They teach you how to swaddle the baby. They teach you how to feed the baby. They teach you how to change the baby's diapers. You get a lot of information. People are always just barging right into the room and telling you all kinds of stuff that's happening or that should happen or that you should do. After we get home, that's me and Pi. His name is Pi, P-Y, Pi, short for Pymander. And then another picture of Pi after his first bath. He was not crying here, but during the bath itself, I think he was crying. And then this is a family picture that was taken a couple days ago. So finally, it's feeling settled. It's feeling very real. It's feeling very ordinary. Honestly, it feels like, okay, this is just what it is now. And yes, it's slightly tiring. You have to get up at 2 in the morning and change diapers and stuff. But that's all part of it. I'm enjoying it so far. I think it's very interesting. I feel like the same person that I was before, but the process, I think, is an ongoing sort of unfolding thing, which has been really meaningful, really interesting. And so that is why I took was it a 2 or a 3 week break on the podcast episodes. So I appreciate your patience on that. I'm back now, so I'll be doing these every week on Fridays. So I hope you can join either live or not. That's fine too. And it is what it is. That's it. That's what happened. That's what's going on. Still, I mean, if you hear any crying downstairs, it's because he's probably hungry and he wants to eat. So it's really interesting. It's really great. Although, that said, certainly easier for a father than a mother. You know, fathers, you're going through things and doing things that might be tiring, but it's nothing compared to what mothers have to do during pregnancy and after giving birth. It's nothing compared to that. And then everyone's focused on the baby. Oh, the baby is so cute. Is the baby eating enough? What about the baby? So as a mother, you would be very reasonable to feel, okay, what? I just went through all of this and now everyone is focused on the baby. What's this? What about me? Right? That's, I think, an important lesson. And a couple of takeaways for me. Number one, much appreciation for mothers and what they go through for their children. Just on a biological, physical level, putting everything else aside, that's tough, right? So that's one thing. That is an amazing thing. 2, the maternal instinct is also very interesting to see. You see, the baby cries and then a thing happens in the mother, in their brain, that is the most important thing going on in the world when they cry. And there's a lot more than that, but just the mother's instinct. And I guess people call that mother's love. I guess that's what that is. I don't know why I tend to want to call it instinct because, you know, the bear is the same. It's the same. It's the instinct to take care of your children, right? And then the other takeaway might be routine seems to be very important for babies. Routines. I don't particularly like routines, but I'm seeing very clearly that for babies, getting into a routine and having a routine seems to be very important, because if things are not happening when they're supposed to happen, then they get kind of lost and their cycles get off. So babies, I think, benefit from having a regular schedule. That's at least so far been my takeaway. And also, you get all kinds of advice from all kinds of people. Oh, you should do this, you should try this, do that. Why not do this? Maybe listen to all, at least my takeaway so far, listen to everybody and say, okay, good advice, thank you. But then be ready to completely ignore that advice if it doesn't seem to apply to your situation, because I think every baby is unique and different, and there are some common things that may or may not work, but you don't want to listen. You don't want to emphasize too much other people's experience over your own. I think that's worth considering. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Those joining, hello. Good to have those who are live here. Thank you, Bahar. Guinara from Uzbekistan. Is it Bahar? Bahar? All right. So, this is our theme for today, and we're going to get into some related topics. So why don't we hop into the words first? Let's do that first, shall we? Yes, we shall. So vocab for new babies. How do I make this thing? Wait. Sorry. Okay. So, from Turkey. Okay, welcome from Turkey. Welcome from Turkey. Wait a second. Why? Hold on. I'm having a slight, not a technical difficulty, but a question, a technical question that I'm trying to resolve here. Want to make this thing stay on the screen. How do I make it stay on the screen? All right, I'll have to figure that out later, I guess. All right. So, whether or not you have a baby or are going to have one, or want to know something about babies and how to talk about them when people have them, it's important to know a few useful words. So we're going to go through this. This is for newborns, for brand new babies. So some useful vocabulary that you definitely need to talk about this stuff. Okay, and we're going to start with, let's say, before the birth and then after. Okay, so if you have a friend who's pregnant, right, and you want to talk to them in English about that, right, and leading up to giving birth, there are some useful words that we may need. And the first one is the due date. This is useful in a lot of different ways. The due date is the date when something is due. We use this for babies. We use it for library books. We use it for assignments in school. We use it for reports at work, For all of these things, we use when something is due. Now, it doesn't always have to have date after it. So, for example, if you have a friend who's pregnant, if you want to ask a respectful question, a polite question, you might say, when are you due? Another question you might ask is, how far along are you? If you say, when are you due, then you might hear back January 23rd or something like that. But if you say, how far along are you, then you might hear back something like 16 weeks or 31 weeks. Usually you'll hear it in weeks rather than months, right? And when are you due, you're going to get a specific date, right? When is your due date? When are you due? These are the same thing. They're the same question, okay? But, again, we mentioned that we can use this word due in other ways for other things. If it's a library book, then the books are overdue when they're late. You're supposed to return them by Thursday, and you still have them, and it's Saturday, so they are overdue. And the assignment is overdue, and the report is overdue, and this was due yesterday, right? So very, very common for talking about a lot of different things. Now, for pregnancy, we also hear a word very often, which is trimester. Anytime you see TRI, think 3, right? TRI, triangle, right? Trimester, so it's 3 periods. A pregnancy is broken up to 3 periods. 1, 2, 3. First trimester, second trimester, third trimester. So if you ask someone who's pregnant or was pregnant, or you're pregnant and you're trying to ask a friend for some advice, which trimester is the hardest? They might say, oh, the first, because that's when you get morning sickness. Or no, the third, because you're carrying around this giant baby inside, right? So it's the trimester that you're in. It's a way to sort of talk about a general period of time that you're going through or someone is going through when they are pregnant, right? We might say, for example, it's hard to exercise in the 3rd trimester. Or some premature babies are born in the 2nd trimester. That would be very early, right? Being born in the 2nd trimester, you might be very premature and need a lot of medical attention, medical care. A premature baby usually needs to stay in the hospital for a long time to make sure that they're stable before they can go home. They're called premature. Post-mature is not a word. Not something we say. What about using trimester in other places? Not really. You will hear semester, though. For school, education, you'll hear semester. First semester, third semester, maybe, yeah. Maybe. First semester and second semester, related to education. If you go to university, for example, you go to high school, you want to talk about the intervals or the periods within your education, you might say semester. Now, related to parenting, you will also hear maternity and paternity. The word maternal is related to mother. Paternal is related to father. Maternal, paternal. Maternity is, in a specific case, often related to the leave that a mother will take if she works, for example, when she's taking care of the baby, having and taking care of the baby. And that would be called a maternity leave. Now, also, some companies offer paternity leave for a father. Paternity leave. I'm saying paternity leave just to emphasize it. The correct pronunciation is paternity leave. So that would be if a father takes a leave from work for a period of time. And if a mother does it, it's maternity. But if it's either one, then we would say parental leave, right? So I was helping my wife with some of the paperwork she had to do for her maternity, and it's complicated. It's messy. I had a 3-week paternity leave. Well, the 3-week break from doing videos and stuff and working on anything. So that's been nice. I'm still on it technically. Well, no, maybe not. Here I am, right? So maybe not. Labor, you'll hear as a very common word in general. Now, one meaning of labor simply is work. Labor is used to talk about work in different ways. The labors of Hercules, but also generally labor as a thing regarding working, about working. But it's also used for a specific part of pregnancy right before giving birth. So once so usually it goes like this. When a woman's body is ready to give birth, then there are a specific type of muscle contractions called contractions that start pushing the baby out. These are called contractions. This period of time when they become very intense before giving birth is called labor. When she's having contractions, right, and it's often very painful, and maybe you're in the hospital or a birthing center, right, or at home. Some people are born at home. I think I was born at home. Yeah, I was born at home. I think. That's what I'm told. I don't remember it. So you have this period of time, and this might be called your labor. She went into labor, or after a 30-hour labor. So this period of time can be called your labor, my labor, right? Their labor. No, her labor. Someone could refer to a period of time in their life that is very difficult as one of the most difficult labors I ever undertook, something like that. You could say that, having nothing to do with pregnancy and giving birth, right? Now, you may have a natural birth, or you may have a C-section, or you may have an induction. You may induce. That means you sort of force labor to happen. C-section is where the baby is removed surgically, and if it's a natural birth, then it's a natural birth, right? But you can for all of these have a period of labor. The contractions got progressively more painful during labor. Okay. Now, what about when the baby comes out? This process is called delivery. The room in the hospital where you give birth, and this might be a point of confusion. Yes, it's weird to say give birth, right? I hear so many variations of this among non-native English speakers. Give baby birth and born a baby. You cannot say born a baby. You cannot say give baby birth. It is give birth. If you want to add baby, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can say give birth to a baby. Gave birth to a baby is a little redundant because giving birth is to a baby. So you don't need to say it, right? So this room is called the delivery room. Delivery like delivering a pizza? Yes. Say deliver a report to your boss. You deliver a pizza and you deliver a baby. Now, who's delivering the baby? Actually, the doctor is delivering the baby. The mother is giving birth. So just to be clear, the mother is not delivering the baby. The baby is being delivered by the doctor in, if it's a hospital, the delivery room of the hospital. Okay? So this process is called the delivery, but it's not the mother who's delivering it. The delivery is a facilitation by someone else, perhaps a midwife, perhaps a doctor, or sometimes if it happens in the car, I've heard that can happen, then the father. That happens. I've heard some people, they're on the way to the hospital and the baby just comes out in the car. Wow, that sounds insane. That sounds crazy. So the delivery room was dimly lit to make it more relaxing because you might be in there for a long period of time, right? After delivery, this process, so delivery is the adjective for the room, but the process is delivery. After delivery, we moved into the nursing wing, okay? So what about some words that we can use for babies? After the birth, after delivery. So what about new babies? One of the first things that you're taught is how to swaddle the baby. Swaddle is essentially the wrapper of the baby. Babies are used to being in a womb, which is very compact. They're in there like this, and so they like that feeling. And also they have this instinct where if there's nothing in front of them, they'll reach out suddenly. It's this instinct to grab, and it's so strong that it can wake them up. So if they're sleeping, sometimes they'll just go, what? Like that. And it's called, I think, a Moro instinct is what it's called. And so a swaddle will keep their arms down so that they can't do that. So that's called swaddling the baby. And the thing that you wrap them in is, yes, it is a blanket, perhaps, but it's often called a swaddle. So you swaddle a baby in a swaddle. You swaddle a baby in a swaddle. You can say you swaddle a baby in a blanket, but saying swaddling a baby in a swaddle is okay. You wouldn't say that because you would just say swaddle the baby, but you could say that. So swaddling babies tightly makes them feel relaxed. Or some swaddles, talking about a swaddle as a noun, are much better than others. That has been my experience. Some are terrible and some are really good. And you have to find a good one. You have to find one that works for you. Now, one word that's often used to describe how babies can be is fussy. That's not when they're crying their eyes out. If they're crying or screaming, they're crying, they're screaming, they're bawling perhaps. They do that sometimes. Most of the time, though, they're either a newborn baby. We can call a newborn baby, by the way, although this should be in here, but it's not. I apologize. This word should be here. Infant. A newborn baby is called a newborn baby, or also called an infant. An infant. So an infant is usually either feeding, drinking milk, right? Sleeping, sometimes just sitting quietly, or perhaps a bit fussy. So if he gets fussy, maybe he's just hungry. Fussy doesn't mean screaming and crying. Fussy just means sort of little sounds, little noises that indicate some discomfort. Basically, they're trying to tell you something. Hey, I want to sleep. Hey, I want to eat. Hey, I'm uncomfortable. Hey, somebody needs to change my diaper, or something like that, right? They're a little bit fussy. Some babies get fussy because they have gas. Babies' digestive systems are sort of still taking shape, and so they might have gas, and that might make them a bit fussy. So sort of a level below crying or angry or something. Can we use the word fussy to describe ourselves? Yeah. I get fussy if I don't eat breakfast. Not true for me, but some people may say that. I get fussy if I don't have my coffee. That is true for me. I must have my coffee, and if I don't, I get fussy. Sort of like a little impatient, right? Slightly short with others, maybe. It might express itself differently in big people rather than infants. Noise machines can calm a fussy baby. A noise machine is a machine that makes noise. And they're very useful. Babies like them, or at least it makes babies less fussy. You'll often see the word proofing at the end of words. And essentially what that means every time you see it is to make something unable to be crossed or penetrated or impacted by that. So if a plan is foolproof, it's a foolproof plan, then there's nothing, or at least I believe there's nothing that can be done to throw the plan off or make the plan not happen. It's foolproof. It's going to work. Some police officers wear bulletproof vests. Not all police officers wear bulletproof vests. Bulletproof, you guessed it, means that bullets can't go through. Waterproof means that water can't go through. Airproof means that air can't go through. Babyproof is a little bit different. It doesn't mean babies can't go through. It means you want to make sure that the things in your house that could hurt babies cannot hurt babies. So this is a process of what we call baby proofing. We better baby proof the house. So this is a verb, right? Once it's done, then it is a baby proofed house. The house has been baby proofed. That means electrical sockets, hard corners, things that can injure babies, mirrors that could tip and fall down. They cannot, or they've been accounted for, or they've been moved, or you've added something soft and rubbery onto it. It has been baby proofed. Okay. So that means babies can crawl around, run around, and cannot hurt themselves. Now, I put burping not because I think you don't know what burping means, but because I want to highlight that it is, in this case, for babies, a verb. And there's something interesting about it. If I burp right now, bleh, you could say, did you just burp? And I would say, yes, I did just burp. Excuse me. So sorry. Bleh, I did it again. I burped in front of the queen. How embarrassing. But that's something that I do. I did that. When I do it, the thing that I did is called a burp. So there are two ways to do it. I burp, and the thing that I did was a burp. And for babies, it's a bit different because you can do it to them. So burping babies is essential after every single feeding. After you feed them, they need to be burped. But I don't burp myself. And another person won't burp me. Why? Because I'm a grown adult. Right? So there's a point at which we become unburpable. We're no longer, we're burp proof. We cannot be burped by other people. There's a point at which the burping is a thing we do rather than a thing other people do to us. But for a newborn baby, burping is a thing that you do to the baby. I'm going to burp the baby after I feed him. Maybe try burping him. Oh, that's a good idea. So you put the baby on your shoulder, you pat them on the back, and eventually you hear some weird gurgling noises, right? The baby has been burped. So that's interesting, I think, that it kind of changes. I don't know exactly what the point is at which being burped is a thing, and then at which you become unburpable. I don't know what point that is, but I love now that I have invented the word. I think I've invented it. Unburpable. I am unburpable. I can burp, but I'm unburpable. Try to burp me, I won't do it. Now, the last thing I want to mention is a binky or a pacifier. So there are a lot of interesting words for this, but the official name, I want to bring this up because there's sort of an official name for it and then usually these cute short words. So the official name is a pacifier, and this is a thing that a baby will suck on, and it makes them maybe feel calm or relaxed if they're feeling fussy. They might suck on this little thing that's usually round, and it goes into their mouth, and they just suck on that. And it's comforting, right? This thing may be called a pacifier, but often people call it something else. And maybe it's because pacifier is kind of a formal sounding word. To pacify someone is to make them calm down, right? I don't know why. But most people don't say pacifier. A lot of Americans use the word binky. I can't speak to other English-speaking countries like the UK or Australia, although binky does sound pretty Australian. That sounds like something Australians would say. I don't know what they say, but there's often a shorter term for it, maybe a passy. I've heard some people call it a passy, a binky, a passy, something like that, right? Eventually, he will have to be weaned off the pacifier. Weaned off means gradually make it decrease over time until you don't need it anymore. That is to wean off of something or be weaned off of something. So far, I don't know if you can hear that. There's a not a fussy baby. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm hearing it downstairs right now. There is a crying baby downstairs, and I can tell you, because I see the time, that it is because he is hungry. So it's feeding time. First he was fussy, now he's crying. Then he will be burped because he is burpable. And then maybe he will get a binky and he will go back to sleep and not be fussy anymore. Anyway, those are some, I think, very common, useful words that you need in order to talk about having babies and babies themselves, taking care of babies, whether you're the one doing it or other people around you are, for example, pregnant or having babies. It's good to know how to talk about this stuff. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. If you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And also, get a free course, Natural English Conversations, in the links in the description. All right. Thank you very much, Vitali. I appreciate that. From one unburpable man to another, I deeply appreciate that. British English, you'd hear people ask, how far gone are you? What? I've heard how far gone, like for people being unstable or drunk, perhaps, but I don't think I've ever heard far gone to refer to a pregnancy. Interesting. That's very interesting. Saeed from Somalia, welcome. Welcome to here. All right. Rooibos break. Recently, my two favorite teas. I only drink 2 teas. I used to be very eclectic in my tea drinking. Eclectic meaning I do all kinds of different things. I try mint. I have chamomile. I have green tea. I drink rooibos. I drink all kinds of things. Pu'er tea. I drink everything, right? Now, I pretty much just drink 2 teas. I drink rooibos, which is a South African herbal, and I drink turmeric. I don't know why I love turmeric tea. I could drink turmeric tea all day long. I love it. It's great. It's amazing. Fantastic. It's not so much that it's good, it's just earthy. Both turmeric and rooibos are very earthy teas. I like things that are earthy. I don't know if can you guys hear that? Can you hear the baby crying downstairs? Luckily, I mean, I when I'm not doing this, which is not usually, I'm down there. I try to be very involved. I want to be involved. I want to be a good dad, you know. He's crying downstairs, but I know that my mother-in-law and his mother, Pie's mother, are downstairs taking care of him. So I know it's okay. It's probably just feeding time. It is feeding time. Congrats on the baby, says Alejandro. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to do a question. Let me just get out the blackboard here. But he's really crying down there. Can you guys hear that? He's really crying. Have I bought it Starbucks, said Saeed. No, I have not bought it Starbucks. And when I say it, I know what you mean. I think you're talking about the baby. Once you have a baby, you usually don't want to refer to the baby as an it. It's kind of weird to say, how is it? It's usually going to be a he or she. You're going to pick one of those, and or you're gonna use that one, whatever one is relevant. So I have not purchased Starbucks for him because he is a baby. I started drinking coffee when I was about 6 years old. Oh, not the baby, I mean the tea. No, I make it at home. I don't buy... I feel like Starbucks does make pretty good, decent coffee, so I would buy coffee at Starbucks, but I don't think I would ever dream of buying tea at Starbucks. It's just water and a tea bag. I can make that at home, you know. I don't think he's missing her. They're both down there together. Red and white tea. Pinot Noir and Merlot. That's not tea. Maybe it is. I guess it's grape tea. Fermented grape tea. It's a very generous description of wine. Fermented grape tea. Perhaps. Okay, let's go over to the blackboard, shall we? Let me make sure I've got my Pen working okay. Yep. Yep, 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 yep. Yep, 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 yep. Yep, 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 yep. Okay. Okay, where's my... Hold on. I gotta get my pen working. I always test the board before to make sure, and sometimes then when I'm actually doing it live, it stops working. Stupid. Okay. A question from Melanie. When should I use an imperative sentence? I think that's a good question. An imperative sentence, first of all, what the heck is an imperative sentence? Let's talk about that first, and then go over some different types, some different examples, and talk about, well, Melanie's question here, when should I use an imperative sentence? By the way, if you have questions you'd like me to talk about or answer, you can ask those in the comments, or you can join the Discord and ask me those there. And I might answer you directly, or perhaps answer them here. Like this. Okay. So there are different types of sentences, and they have names. And one type of sentence is called an interrogative sentence, and that is another way of saying a question. One type of sentence is an imperative sentence. What is unique or special about an imperative sentence? This is a sentence that does not include the subject. And the reason it doesn't include the subject is because the subject is implied. So in a normal sentence, you would have something like this. You bought a scarf. Okay, so this is the subject of the sentence. Now, if we want instead to give someone an instruction, tell someone what to do, recommend them to do something, we might, instead of using their name, for example, or using something like you, we might simply start with the verb. Okay? But there is an implied subject when we do that. So we can't just remove this. We can't say bought a scarf. That doesn't work here. But when we're giving instructions or commands, we're telling somebody not to do something, we can then remove this, right? So for example, if I say buy a scarf, that is an imperative sentence. Okay, buy a scarf. Now, what am I doing there? What I'm saying is to you, I'm looking directly at you. Buy a scarf. What situation would we use this in? In what situation would we use this? That's better. You are cold. You're shivering. And you say, especially my neck area. It's so cold. I say, buy a scarf. I'm telling you the thing that you should do that's going to solve your problem. Now, I'm not commanding you to do it. It is a recommendation. And so, in this case, it's not rude, really. I'm just telling you what I think you should do. Now, I could say it a different way. I could say, I think you should buy a scarf. That's okay. We're going to stay away from that for now. This is simply to indicate to others what we think they should do, what they might do, what they might consider doing, starting with a verb, right? And then giving that command. And here are some common examples. Open the window. How about put those, that's a you, believe it or not, by the door. Put those by the door. How about get off the table? Get off the table. How about use the included wrench? How about add an egg? Just keep going. Add an egg. Now, what I want you to notice about these is that they all share something. They start with the verb. Add, open, put, get, use. Right? I feel like this really looks like an O. That is a U. Now it looks like an A. Put those by the door. Okay? Now, the interesting thing about these is it does depend on how you say them. So here your intonation, your way of saying it kind of matters. Because if I say, open the window, open the window, open the window, right? I could say it in a different way and it might achieve a different effect. In one case, I might sound very frustrated and angry, like I'm barking a command at you, and you might think, oh, how about say please? In another, it might just be a simple statement of something I want you to do in a very friendly way, and you're happy to do that. Open the window. Now, you can add please if you want to really soften it. Please open the window. Open the window, please. Right? And that is a way to make sure that the other person feels that there is a sense of politeness. Right? Okay. But that is for when I want you to do something that I'm perhaps too lazy to do myself or cannot do myself at the moment, right? Maybe I can't move because for some reason I have forgotten how. So I say, please open the window. But sometimes it's an instruction, or you're trying to do something and I'm just telling you the next step. And there's no way to generally interpret that as rude. That is something that's written down in an instruction manual telling you the next thing to do. Or perhaps somebody telling you what to do next because you've finished one step. Okay, so I'm on the phone with my grandmother because she's an expert, and she's talking me through how to bake a cake. All right, so I put the batter in, the flour in, and then I put through the almonds in, and now what do I do? Add an egg. Okay. So I put the egg in. That's a simple instruction, and that's usually what we want. We want it to be very clear, right? So it's not rude. It's just what to do next. If there you say, please add an egg, that's weird, right? If it's an instruction, that's strange. If you were to be reading an instruction manual for your IKEA chair that you bought, and it says, now I would like you to please use the included wrench. No. That would be very strange. You want to see very simply, very clearly using this type of sentence, an imperative sentence. Use the included wrench. Oh, this wrench? Yes, this wrench. Okay, I got it, right? Very simple. Now, get off the table is probably an urgent thing. That's not necessarily rude. Maybe I'm talking to a cat. Get off the table, right? So there's a whole spectrum of, let's say, feelings that we might have or ways to express these imperative sentences that can achieve different sort of effects. All right, so we're not done. We have a little bit more I want to talk about. Hopefully now you have at least a pretty good idea for what an imperative sentence is and basically what it's used for: to give a command, to state what you think another person should do, to make a request as a statement, right? And perhaps to give an instruction, okay? Now we might use a negative. You often hear this with don't at the beginning. It's exactly the same. Don't touch my cheesecake. So I got a cheesecake, I put it in the refrigerator. I'm worried that you might eat a bite of it. I don't want you to do that because I want to have it tomorrow, so don't touch my cheesecake. Okay. If I want to soften this, all I have to do is add please. So anytime you want to make sure somebody does something or doesn't do something, but you want to make sure it's a little more gentle, please close the window. close the window, please. Please don't touch my cheesecake. Don't touch my cheesecake, please, is much less common. So if you're using don't, generally we put please in front of don't. And if you're using a simple instruction or a simple command or request, like close the window, it doesn't matter. Please close the window, please. Okay? Now, I like to use imperative sentences when I want things to feel very active. Let's say it's a video description or a description for a course, for example. Now, one way that you could say something is to just explain what's going to happen. If you're going to describe something in a video, or you're going to give a title for a video, for example, or a description under a video or a lesson or something, you might say, you are going to learn how to use imperative sentences. Oh, that's an I and that's a V. That's not a U. That's a that's a V. Sentences. Now, but I want you to consider the difference between you are going to learn how to use imperative sentences and simply learn how to use imperative sentences. Now, both are correct. I think this one feels more active, punchy, engaging. Learn how to do this. Stay over there, right? Get this. Acquire this. Master this. These beginning with verbs feel very active, very punchy. And so you often see this in marketing copy. You often see this for descriptions of things that you want people to be engaged in, right? So it's a very good way to sort of give a sentence a different kind of life, right? Instead of describing everything and using the same type of sentence all the time. I am a big fan of using imperative sentences in that way. Now, finally, we might use imperative sentences when we're trying to accomplish a specific thing using if. Now, we can use a conditional sentence using if. We have the beginning of the sentence as if something do this, right? That, let's put that to one side. If we want to start not with if, right, but to do something, if you want to do something, this could be considered a type of imperative sentence. For example, I'll give you an example. Invest carefully if you want to retire early. Okay? So this is what you should do. And then I add an if statement to say this thing I'm telling you to do is connected to a well. If that's what your goal is, then do this. If not, then don't worry about it, right? And you could reverse that and say, if you want to retire early, invest carefully. But it would be a little different because you would say, if you want to retire early, then you would have a comma, invest carefully. If we don't have, if we have the if in the second part, then we don't need to have the comma, okay? Now, sometimes we use to instead of if. So read daily to continue expanding your horizons. Read daily. So first I state the action that you should do. Now I could just end the sentence there. That is an imperative sentence. Read daily. What should I do? If someone asks you a question and you want to give a simple answer, what should I do if I want to continue expanding my horizons? My simple answer could be a simple imperative sentence, a sentence that goes, read daily. And that's it. That's the whole sentence. And that is a correct sentence. It is a correct imperative sentence. But maybe nobody asked me and I just want to give advice to the world. I would say, read daily to continue expanding your horizons. Or read daily in order to continue expanding your horizons. Or read daily if you want to continue expanding your horizons. Ooh, I don't like that one. Okay, so that's how we use I hope that answers the question. That's how we use imperative sentences generally. Try it out. Look out for imperative sentences when you're reading marketing copy. Next time you buy something, see if the description has a little bit of that. It's very common. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments. If you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And also, don't forget to get a free course, Natural English Conversations, in the links in the description. All right. All right. Okay. All right. So now we do this. We do this. And then we do this for no particular reason. For no particular reason we do that. For zero reason. I prefer, depends on the situation. When you talk to your children. Yeah, so if you want to talk to your children using imperative sentences, you would say, perhaps, go do your homework. Right? Sit down. Don't do that. Come over here. Eat your dinner. Eat your breakfast. Drink your coffee. By the way, if you haven't already done so, friends, neighbors, again, like button and subscribe if you want to support the channel. And you can join the Discord as well. That's in the links in the description. The Discord is free to join. And you can also get that free course, Natural English Conversations. And my other courses are, the membership for my other courses should be, if the link is there, 30% off. 30% off all courses membership. Okay? Okay. We're going to be doing a deep dive today. But before we do, I just want to check one thing. To make sure that the stream is going okay. Is the stream going? Yes, it is. Okay, we're good. We're good. Sorry about that little burp noise there. I burped. Even though I am still unburpable, I did burp. I'm an unburpable burper. I cannot be burped, but I do burp. I cannot be burped, but I do burp. I do burp, although I cannot be burped because I am unburpable. The unburpable Luke Pretty, they call me. While it may be true that I am unburpable, in fact, being unburpable is my claim to fame, I do burp from time to time. And those burps do not invalidate my claim to fame of being unburpable. That's a fun sentence. All right. Finally, we're going to hop over here. And what I want to do, let me move this. Hey-oh. Okay, I want to, this is going to be our bank. Okay? What we're going to do is go through an article about the Montessori method, the Montessori approach to teaching children, to educating children. We're going to be going back and forth between this and our word bank over here. From our word bank, we're going to be writing things down, new words, new phrases, trying to really pay attention to how these are used in context. This is going to be an exploration of language in context. This is how we learn new things. We read something, we pick something out that's new, we figure out how it's used, right? And then we know it. Then we can use it, right? So we're gonna try to go as quickly as we can, but we're also not going to rush ourselves. Okay? This is from the American Montessori Society, and it is a simple description of what Montessori is, right? So let's just get started. What is Montessori education? For more than a century now, the child-focused approach that Dr. Maria Montessori, an Italian physician, developed for educating children, has been transforming schools around the globe. Okay, so from this, I want to pick out the word developed, and I want to pick out transform. Now, even though you may know these, I want to focus on them in this particular context. So, develop, and transform, or in this case, transforming. Okay? What does developed mean in this context? Dr. Maria Montessori, an Italian physician, developed for educating children, and children has been transforming schools around the globe. So, in this case, developed is being used as a sort of process or something that is implied to have been created as a result of experience or experimentation, right? So if you just say, I created this, I made it, right? That's different than saying, I developed it. If I say I made a cake, you know, that's a thing that takes 20 to 30 minutes and it's done. But if I say I developed a cake, suddenly that sounds very weird. What do you mean you developed a cake? But if I say I developed a cake recipe, now suddenly it makes sense. What does that mean? Well, maybe I baked 50 cakes, starting from the worst cake you can possibly imagine to what I think is a really good recipe. So the iterations, the experimentation are all the cakes I baked as I'm honing, refining, adding more sugar, less sugar, more flour, right? More ants and flies, whatever I want to add that makes my cake recipe really good. So last year I developed a cake recipe might be the same as saying this physician, Dr. Maria Montessori, developed this approach for educating children. It implies this process, not necessarily that she got something wrong, but there's an implication of more than just, there it is, I'm done. Okay, there it is. I finished it, right? It's completed, a momentary thing, developed. And sometimes in the news, you'll hear people say, oh, the situation is still developing. That means it's still ongoing. There is this connotation of an ongoing thing that hasn't reached its final state yet. And once it does reach its final state, it may be developed, hinting at the fact that it was ongoing. It was this process, okay? And then the other one, again in context here, has been transforming schools around the globe. Well, to transform something could be a simple type of change or a complex type of change. Which type is this, right? For educating children has been transforming schools around the globe. So what were the schools like before? Were they bad? Does transforming only mean from bad to good? Or does transform mean just change in general? Does my recipe transform over time? Probably not. It is developed over time because I'm working toward a goal of it being really, really good. It would be a little bit odd, I think, to use transform for the cake analogy, for the recipe analogy. But for schools to transform, although it may be that they're better now, it just means that they went from one thing over time to another. So an economy can transform. A way of doing something can transform. Once you do that, you go through a transformation. So the forms of this would be transform, transforming, and then once that has happened, it is a transformation. So maybe before, the schools were teaching children in a very rigid way. Do this, now learn this, memorize this. And after, perhaps using Maria Montessori's approach to education, the schools became different. It might have been gradual, it may have happened rather quickly, but now they do things differently, and we're gonna learn how they do things, right? But I want to be clear that transforming doesn't have to be positive. It could be negative too. A horrific transformation, right? Someone wanted to do plastic surgery, and they went through a major transformation, but maybe not for the better if it doesn't look good. Or some people, I saw there's a person who's transforming herself into a snake, or her goal is to become a snake. Or there's another person in my home state that I'm from who was known as the cat person, and he was transforming himself into a cat physically. I think he got surgeries to make his face look like a cat. So is that better? I mean, I don't know. But he definitely transformed into a cat. He had cats all over his car. Very weird. The cat guy. As soon as you enter a classroom, you know that something different is afoot. We'll go back to afoot. Montessori classrooms are immediately recognizable. You will see children working independently in groups, often with specially designed learning materials, deeply engaged in their work, and respectful of themselves and their surroundings. Okay. So something different is afoot. Something different is afoot? What the heck? Is that a typo? It should be a space foot? What the heck? No. This is not a particularly common word, but it is often used to bring up something in a slightly dramatized way, right? Or to catch your attention. It's not a very common word. It has this feeling of being, I guess, somewhat antiquated or old-fashioned, but it can be very effective when it is used, right? Something different is afoot. It means when you walk into the classroom, you see that something is going on which you wouldn't normally see in a classroom. Something odd is afoot. Right? A scheme is afoot. A diabolical plan is afoot. You often hear this in comically silly super villains in comically silly movies are maybe scheming their plans, and when they're doing it, that thing, their scheme, their plan is afoot. It is afoot, not a foot, but afoot, right? So again, I don't want to suggest that this should be a common thing that you say, but shouldn't be a common thing that you say, but can be very useful if you want to almost catch someone by surprise, to say, hey, there's this thing going on that you didn't expect, right? This thing going on that maybe you did not anticipate. Montessori classrooms are immediately recognizable. You will see children working independently in groups, often with specially designed learning materials, deeply engaged in their work and respectful of themselves and their surroundings. The Montessori method fosters rigorous, self-motivated growth for children and adolescents in all areas of their development: cognitive, emotional, social, and physical. So, I think we don't need to really talk about development, because we're talking about that same thing. Something develops as this ongoing gradual process. Well, guess what? Development is something we might use to refer to you and something you go through. My emotional development as an adult, or childhood, right? A child's development. That is the period of time they go through when they are learning these things, when they're developing their cognitive, emotional, social, and physical traits, characteristics, right? But we have more things to go over here, because really there are a lot of words here that might cause us to wonder what this sentence means exactly. The Montessori method, note here that this is a capital M, right? So this is the name of it. It is an official name. Anytime you see things capitalized, that's an official name. Fosters rigorous, self-motivated growth. Okay. So foster, if something fosters something, it makes it more likely to happen, it helps it happen, it encourages it to happen. Fostering growth, usually it is a positive thing. Generally you wouldn't foster corruption. I suppose you could say that, but the way that it's usually used is to talk about something that's positive. You may hear it used in a negative context once in a while, but most of the time it's going to be talking about fostering to encourage something good to happen, to allow something good to happen, right? So this environment fosters maybe creativity. I believe that Pixar, for example, they designed, or the campus of Pixar designed the campus. No, the campus didn't design it. The designers of the Pixar campus designed it to foster creativity. So the way that it was designed is meant to encourage people to get together and talk about ideas, throw ideas around. So the environment itself, the facilities, the design of the campus fosters creativity. Okay? That's very useful. So what do you want to foster in yourself? You can foster things within you, right? I think reading really helps foster maybe a lot of open-mindedness in people, especially reading text on very different topics or different viewpoints on the same topic. For me, really fosters an attitude of open-mindedness or acceptance toward ideas that normally I might not be very accepting of. So to foster or fostering something. I'll just put this in ing here, like this. Okay? So, but we're in this first sentence here. So, fosters rigorous self-motivated growth. Now we need to look at rigorous. So, if we use rigorous, usually this is going to be somewhat intensive. Usually this is not going to be casual or relaxed. It's going to be very detail-oriented, very focused, right? So it's not like, hey, just do whatever you want in the Montessori method, just go play with some blocks. No, it is rigorous. It is very focused on what it is doing. If you do something rigorously, you do it intensely, you do it in a way that isn't broken up by other things without a lot of distractions, right? If you're very rigorous in something, it's kind of like saying you're doing that with some intensity. You're doing that with some focus. You're doing it with some attention to detail, depending on what it is. Because rigorous exercise wouldn't be attention to detail. But rigorous study or doing paperwork rigorously might be attention to detail, might be focusing on details to make sure nothing is incorrect. Whereas rigorous exercise might be about the intensity of the exercise, right? So, rigorous, self-motivated growth. Rigorous, self-motivated growth. And we'll just put self-motivated here too. Self-motivated. I don't think I need to explain this though, right? Self-motivated means self-motivated. It's not other people telling you have to do it. You're deciding that you have to do it because you are self-motivated. Self-motivated, right? Okay. Back to the article. The Montessori method fosters rigorous self-motivated growth for children and adolescents. Adolescents, generally, that's still below the age of 18, not an adult, right? But perhaps not a child. So you would be an adolescent at age 15. You would be an adolescent at age 11, right? Not an adult, basically. In all areas of their development, cognitive, emotional, social, physical. Now, I think you probably are fully aware of social, physical, and emotional, but just to be clear, cognitive means your mind, right? Mental, cognitive. It's an adjective for the mind. Anytime you see cognitive, it's going to be related to the mind. I believe that's from Latin. Cogito ergo sum. is the famous thing that Descartes said, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. Thinking, cogito, cognitive. Right? Okay. Moving on then. When a child is given a little leeway, he will at once shout, I want to do it. But in our schools, which have an environment adapted to children's needs, they say, help me do it alone. Okay? So what is leeway? Leeway is like saying some room or space. All right? Give me a little leeway. That could be, I need more time to finish something. Give me more leeway. Maybe you don't have to micromanage me. Let me figure out how to do it by myself. Give me some leeway on this. Perhaps just means I want to maybe take a little bit of personal time to reflect on something without having to say what I'm going to do right now, right? So it can be used in that sort of way. But usually it wouldn't be used in a simple sense of space, often. For example, you wouldn't say, if there's a car right behind you, I wish that car would give me a little leeway. Generally not. You might use it for rope, like slack in the rope, right? Give me some leeway in the rope. That means give me a little bit more rope because I need to tie something and I don't have enough rope. So give me a little bit more rope so that I have enough rope to tie the knot. You could use leeway in that sense. So in some cases it's used physically, but often it's used in those situations where we may want to have some personal space, some time. We want other people to give us a break and not be so focused on what we're doing and telling us how to do things, micromanaging us. It's often used in that way. So leeway. And again, I'm not saying it's not used in a physical way. It is. It's just not as often as non-physical. Okay, that's what Dr. Maria Montessori said. Okay, so we'll skip this. Montessori education is student-led and self-paced, but guided, assessed, and enriched by knowledgeable and caring teachers, the leadership of their peers, and a nurturing environment. So I feel like some of these things kind of speak for themselves, student-led and self-paced. If something is student-led, then it's led by students, right? So that means that it's not the teachers who are leading, saying what we will do next, it's the students. Okay, that's fairly straightforward. Self-paced, we looked at self-motivated, self-paced. That means you choose the pace, right? The speed or the rate. So self-motivated, and you could say self. We'll just put this as another one of these, self-paced. Basically, you're choosing how fast you work. And do I work quickly? Do I do my schoolwork slowly? Do I take my time? How do I do it, right? So we're gonna skip really talking about those in detail. Assessed and enriched by knowledgeable and caring teachers, the leadership of their peers, and a nurturing environment. What I want to talk about is peers and nurturing. So peers actually is very simple. I just want to make sure you know what it is. Peers are other people who are in some sense on the same level as you. They might be in the same age group. It might be that it's your level of cognitive development, your intelligence level. It might be in terms of your career, the people who have maybe the same amount of experience as you, right? So your peers could be a subjectively defined thing. If I say I have no peers, that means, well, of course there are people who are my age, but I'm intellectually superior to everyone. Well, that would be a very arrogant thing to say, but I understand that statement, right? It means that in some sense you feel that you have no equals. So a peer is someone who is equal to you in some sense. Now, it's often simply referred to in terms of age, right? My peers in school. That means those people who are the same age as me, my peers. But I just want to make it clear that peers can be used in other senses. That subjective sense of people who, if I'm the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, people who are also the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies might be my peers. And people who are not the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies may not be my peers in the sense of not being able to understand or empathize with the difficulties of being a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, right? So you could mean peer in that sense as well. And so there are a lot of different, you can imagine a lot of different ways where you might use that to subjectively talk about yourself or others as a peer in some sense, to peer. Not peer, but peer. Not peer, but peer. Okay? And nurturing. So this is similar to fostering, right? To nurture is to, again, encourage growth, to provide nutrition, to give or provide something healthy that allows something good to happen. It's a good thing. It's a positive thing. Now, that could be physically nurturing, right? A parent should be nurturing of their children, right? We often refer to parents as nurturing, right? But we could also nurture plants. If you find a wounded baby bird on the side of the road, you may nurture that baby bird back to life, right? Back to health, not back to life. If it's already dead, it's probably not going to be nurtured. But you could nurture it back to health if it's been injured. I did that once as a child with a hummingbird. I fed it sugar water. I nurtured it back to health, and then it flew away. And that was a great experience. But you could also nurture your mind by reading books, by educating yourself, by taking online classes or courses. You may nurture your children's emotional development, their cognitive development in different ways by enrolling them in programs, by providing them books, by talking to them, having conversations, right? Nurturing is a very broad word. Right? So what is a nurturing environment? This is an environment that fosters this type of development. So it is an environment that fosters X, and it is a nurturing environment. It's a very useful word in this case. I should write that down too while I'm here. Nurturing. And it can be used as a verb, nurture, to nurture. I nurtured the bird back to health, back to life. No, back to health. Well, if it would be nurtured the bird, I'm trying to think of a zombie bird, but yeah, it's not working. I was trying to make a zombie bird joke, but it didn't work. Okay, we're getting close here. Within the community of a multi-age classroom designed to create natural opportunities for independence, citizenship, and accountability, children embrace multisensory learning and passionate inquiry. Individual students follow their own curiosity at their own pace, taking the time they need to fully understand each concept and meet individualized learning goals. Okay, so I'm kind of, I don't know if you've noticed, trying to stay away from these hyphenated words. Multi-age, multi-sensory. I think it's important to know what the prefixes or roots of words mean, because that allows you to then guess meanings. Because if you know what multi means, and you probably do, it means more than one, then multicolored would be more than one color, and multi-age would be more than one age, and multi-sensory would be more than one sense. So that's very easy. We don't need to write it down. We could write down multi, I suppose, but let's just do it. Okay, let's quickly just write down multi and hyphen and self. Okay, multi and self. These are two that we've talked about, multi and self. So if you know what those mean, then it's relatively straightforward to guess the meaning. Sensory would be listening, seeing things, right? Touching things, tactile. So multisensory would be all of those, perhaps. Visually learning, audibly learning, tactile learning. Why do we never talk about olfactory learning? How come that's never a topic of conversation? That's what I want. I want to start an olfactory school where all of your senses are blocked except your sense of smell. And you are expected to learn everything that everyone else learns, but exclusively. So that is not a multisensory learning environment. That would be a monosensory learning environment. Luke's smell school is what it's called. And somehow we figure out how to write books using only smell. We figure out how to teach math using only smell. I don't know how yet, but we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna teach everything. Your eyes are, you have a blindfold on, your ears are plugged, you're not allowed to touch anything, you're in a sensory deprivation tank. The only thing you get is a sense of smell, and you're expected to learn physics, math, biology, chemistry, everything. Anyway, I'll figure it out. Don't worry. This is coming. My course on learning English through smell is coming out soon. Anyway, so yeah, we're skipping the hyphenates, as I was saying. Designed to create natural opportunities for independence, citizenship, and accountability. I'm not sure what they mean by citizenship here. I guess belonging to a group or something like that. But what I want to talk about here is accountability. So if you're accountable, that means you're dependable, you're reliable. If you say you're going to do something, then you do that thing. You have a sense of duty, right? And often we want to know who is accountable for something or who is responsible for something. We might use either of those words, accountable or responsible, interchangeably, right? Now, accountability and responsibility are pretty much the same as well. However, the use might be slightly different, and we would say responsibility would be someone's trait, right, of always being willing to take on a burden. Perhaps, you're so responsible, you have a sense of responsibility. But if we say someone is very accountable, it's not as common, perhaps. Generally, what we're talking about, if we say someone is taking accountability, and that's usually what we say, taking accountability, that means that they're not avoiding blame. They're not trying to say other people should do it. They're not trying to say it's another person's fault. It's often used to talk about when things go wrong, who is responsible for the thing that went wrong specifically. And for that, we would more often use accountable than responsible. Who's accountable for this, right? There's no sense of accountability among our representatives. Sense of accountability, right? So to be accountable is to be the one who's willing to say, it's me. I'm the one. It's me. This is my job. It's me. This was my decision, for example. So again, very similar to responsibility in many ways, but used sometimes slightly differently. So accountability. Running out of space here. Oops. Accountability. Accountability. Children embrace multisensory learning. Embrace. So one meaning of embrace is a hug, right? To embrace things, that would be to welcome things. To say, instead of, I don't like that new thing, I don't want that, oh, that's a bad idea, oh, I don't like to do things that way. We say, yes, I accept this. This is great. Wow, interesting. Can I learn more about this? To be embracing or to embrace things is to hug them. To say, this is good. I want to make this part of myself, right? If you have a new idea and it's a good idea and you embrace that good idea, then you accept that idea. You welcome it. You kind of hug it or embrace it. So that's why embrace means both hug, right, and to accept or welcome new things, new ideas. That's why it means both, because in a sense you're kind of doing this for both of them. And actually it's a very useful, very common word. If someone is not very embracing of new ideas, they don't usually embrace new ideas. They're kind of closed-minded. They don't listen to people. They think they have the right way all the time. They don't pick up new ways of doing things to embrace. So Montessori seems to be a good way to teach children to embrace new ways of doing things, right? Multisensory learning. Embrace learning visually, audibly, tactilely, olfactorily, right? And passionate inquiry. To inquire is to be curious, to wonder, what is this? Inquiry is the noun form. To inquire is the verb form. What's going on? I want to know more about this. Why did you do that? What's wrong with this? Why can't I learn by smell, right? To always ask because you have genuine curiosity about why that is, right? To ask a question in order to get an answer, to ask a question in order to figure something out. The verb is inquire and the noun is inquiry. 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 Okay. Passionate inquiry. Individual students follow their own curiosity at their own pace, taking the time they need to fully understand each concept and meet individualized learning goals. I'm not going to write down individualized because I think you probably know what individual means, but it is just an interesting form of the word individual. If something has been individualized, it has been made unique to you. So I have my goals, you have your goals, she has her goals, right? And they're all different. Whereas in a normal classroom, the only goal is to get an A. And everyone has the same goal. What's the goal? Get an A. But in a Montessori classroom, maybe you and I have slightly different goals. And it's not just get an A, which I think is personally not a bad idea. Given the freedom to support... given the freedom and support... I don't know why sometimes I just read the wrong word. Given the freedom and support to question, probe deeply, and make connections, Montessori students grow up to be confident, enthusiastic, and self-directed learners and citizens accountable to both themselves and their community. They think critically, work collaboratively, and act boldly with integrity. What better outcome could you wish for your children? Yeah, good point. But let's talk about some of these. So we have another self-directed. Okay, so we're not going to talk about that because that would be what? Directed by yourself, right? We have talked about accountable, so we know what that means, right? And accountable to whom? To themselves, to their community, right? But we want to know what probe deeply means. I think deeply might hint at what this means, but to probe is to go further into, right? A probe would be, for example, something that a medical device that maybe goes down your esophagus to check your stomach to make sure that there's nothing going on in your digestive system. So to probe something is to push further, to push and say, I want to know more. What about this thing? Well, okay, well, you've explained that. What about the next thing? Oh, okay, that makes sense. So, but why did you do that, right? To continue to go further and further and further, deeper in, right? To probe is often to be curious, to wonder why, to ask questions in terms of education, to never be satisfied with a simple answer, and to not stop until you deeply understand something. So probe, in this case, is, I think, a very, very useful word. Probe. And it can be used as a noun, it can be used as a verb, and probing could be used as an adjective. Okay? Probe and make connections. Montessori students grow up to be confident, enthusiastic, self-directed learners and citizens accountable to both themselves and their community. They think critically. Okay, so what's critical thinking? You often hear that. Critical thinking is the ability to not just follow your emotions, right? To have an organized way of thinking about things, to not just accept what people say, but to say, well, why is that? And maybe to go against the grain, the norm, right? To be able to objectively analyze details and points of maybe an argument that someone else has made, to be able to use reason, right, to solve problems, to, again, not take things as simple assumptions, to be able to push through to the next level of why is 2 plus 2 4? I understand that it is 4, but why is it 4? Oh, okay, I can actually count the beans and see how many beans there are. And I can see that if I group the beans in different ways, there might be 2 and 2, and that would be 4. So that might be a way to think critically, as a silly, simple example, right? So we often highlight that as a good thing. Critical thinking skills. Critical thinking skills. Okay, so critical thinking. Write that one down here. I'm running out of space. Where's that? Critical, up here. Critical thinking. Critical thinking. Good critical thinking, we say, is usually a positive thing. And the last word here is with integrity. Act boldly with integrity. That means you have principles that you follow. I believe in X. I believe that it's important to be honest, to be transparent, to treat people as I would want to be treated. That can be defined in different ways. But the important thing is that you have perhaps some rules or principles that you follow. They're yours. You have them. And it's not just important that you have them if you have integrity. Integrity doesn't just mean you have rules or principles for yourself. By the way, it's not about other people's rules. It's not about necessarily about the law. It's about your rules and principles. But it's not just enough to have them. It's important that you follow the ones that you have. Integrity generally means to act according to your principles. To act according to your principles. Not just to have principles, right? That is to have integrity. So people use integrity as a way to talk about someone in a very positive way. To say, this person generally is honest. They're trustworthy. They're accountable. They're reliable, right? So this person has integrity. It's a word that kind of sums up a lot of good characteristics about someone. Okay? Integrity. And we often talk about integrity in terms of processes or results of exams as well. If the exam has no integrity, then that means maybe the teacher's just saying, well, I like this student, so that's an A. I don't like this student, so that's a C. So that would be an exam result with no integrity, or a process with no integrity. But a process with integrity would be, if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad, according to some objective standard. And it actually follows that, and there's no secret, shady favoritism or anything like that. Okay? So developed or developing, this process of improving gradually over time. Usually this is suggesting a process. To embrace or welcome something, to take something in without being usually closed-minded. Something is afoot, something is happening, something is going on that maybe is unexpected or surprising or unanticipated, right? To foster something is to encourage it, to allow it, to make a good condition for that to happen. Rigorous would be to do something seriously or with intensity, with care. Leeway is freedom or flexibility, or maybe giving someone some slack to do something like tie a rope, or perhaps leeway to figure out how to do it in their own way. Nurturing would be to provide the conditions to allow something to grow. Nurturing environment for plants to grow, for children to grow. So nurturing would be in some way to provide things that allow for things to happen. There's a cat meowing. Where's the meowing cat? Where's the meowing cat? Where's the meowing cat? I don't see it. Accountability, to live up to your responsibilities. To be the one who says, I am responsible for this, right? That is taking accountability. That is being a responsible person. Also, often those two are very closely connected together. Similarly, integrity, to follow your principles, to transform, usually to change in a radical way. It could be used in a positive way, doesn't necessarily have to be used in a positive way. And once it's done, that is a transformation. A probe or two probes to go further and further into something, deeper and deeper. Self-motivated, self-paced. We talked about multi and self, used in all kinds of ways to hyphenate longer words, and we can guess the meanings of those words if we know what self and multi mean. Peer being people who are somehow equals on the same level, whether it's your age or in some other sense, in a more subjective way. Cognitive, relating to the mind or thinking in some way. Inquiry is sort of to question and wonder and push further to understand something by asking questions. Critical thinking skills, the ability to think in a specific way that allows you to solve problems, to be objective, to use some maybe rules to solve something without being perhaps too emotional or allowing your intuition to totally just sweep through and decide for you. And I think that's all of them. Have I talked about all of them? I think so. All right. So this has been an interesting process, but I encourage you to do this whenever you read an article. Pick out some words, some phrases that are new. Make sure to pay attention to the context. See if you can figure out how to use them, and then try to remember them and remember their usage so that you can start using them naturally in your daily life. If you have any questions about these, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. If you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And also, get a free course, Natural English Conversations, in the links in the description. All right. So that's that. In depth. Oh, wow. Vitaly was there all along. Awesome. Something different is afoot, meaning happening or in progress. Yes. A stir would be another formal equivalent. Yeah, I haven't heard that one very often, though. Except go in depth. Yep. Good notes, Vitaly. Thank you so much for that. All right. I think we'll call it a day for today. Thank you all for joining. It's great to be back. We'll be back next week, next Friday, about the same time. So I hope you can join. If not, that's fine. You can watch or listen later. If you're watching, you can listen on any podcast platform. Just search Cloud English. If you're listening, you can watch on YouTube and Facebook. Just search Cloud English and go to the live tab. That's where those are. Or you can find the podcast playlist. If you haven't already joined the Discord, you can do that. Feel free to reach out to me there. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to grab a course. Those are 30% off for the annual membership. On the website, you can also get a free course, Natural English Conversations, in the links in the description. Everything is in the description. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you in the next one. Have a safe, happy, and restful weekend. Bye, everybody.